Okay, my name is Rick and I'm playing Avatar today. And we're going to talk about what it's like to be in prison. I'm going to try and keep it as PG as I can, but I'm only human. Sometimes I swear, so just be aware of that. I was in jail for 8 years. I did some pretty bad stuff. I was in jails throughout all of Canada. Started out in Bowden for my intake. I didn't get along with some of the inmates there and ended up going to Saskatchewan Maximum Penitentiary, otherwise known as PA Max. I spent about 2 years there, and then I went to Saskatchewan Medium, which is not very fun. The Max was a little better. Not fun at all. My first week in the Max, I saw somebody stabbed 157 times. That wasn't the most craziest thing about it. The craziest thing is this guy was a gang member. He was part of the IP gang. I'm not going to mention his name because he's quite famous. He got stabbed 157 times by 3 of his other gang members, and it was like a demotion. And he was laughing when he left the range. He said, "You guys should have killed me. I'll be back for you later." That was bone chilling. Also, what happened in my first week of a Max, there was a white guy named Jeff and a black guy named Chip. This is before I left my cell. Jeff was a Golden Glove boxer. He's currently doing life in prison for murder, and I don't remember what Chip was in there for because I didn't get a chance to meet him. He was sent to the Regional Psychiatric Center in Saskatchewan before I got out of my cell. Jeff punched him in the face and smashed most of the teeth in his face, and he hit his head so hard on the ground he had to go to the Regional Psychiatric Center to learn how to read and write again. Imagine being hit in the face so hard that you forget how to read and write and have to be taught again over the course of a month after being in a coma for 2 weeks. That's how hard this guy got hit. Feces was flying down his leg. He was wearing shorts. He had a shank in his pocket, which is a metal knife, and who knows what he was planning to do with it. Some guys carry knives and they never intend to use them. Other guys, they're very much capable of stabbing people. It's a scary place. Nobody wants to be in jail. I saw some pretty horrific things in PA Max. I went to the Medium, and then from there I went to Drumheller Institution. Didn't last too long. They have a lot of ways to get in trouble in Drumheller, and I went to Edmonton Maximum Security for the rest of my time. There I saw somebody die. I saw things more horrific than you could ever imagine. Jail is not a place I would wish on anybody. There's certain people I have met in jail, though, that I do think belong there, if that makes sense. Like, there was a guy that goes by Chevy. That's his middle name, not his first name, but he goes by it. He was a Nazi, a skinny Nazi guy that had Irish power tattooed across his forehead. And in most jails, all it takes is one guy to change the dynamic of the entire range, and this is that guy. He will go around and start stabbing people, and believe it or not, people want to listen to the guy that's stabbing people, at first at least, because nobody wants to get stabbed. No matter who you are, nobody wants to be stabbed. It's, you might be able to handle it, but nobody wants that to happen to them. And he would just go around and do brutal things. Like, he would play fight with other inmates, and if he started to lose the fight, there was this guy Jacob was leaving the cell, and they were just play fighting, and he had no reason to believe that this would happen to him. Chevy stabbed him in the back 3 times when he went to leave the cell because he didn't like how Jacob made him feel weaker in front of the other inmates. It's a total asshole thing to do, to stab somebody that beats you in a play fight. That's not very cool. Most guys frown upon it, and it's usually only a matter of time before somebody comes and violently makes that guy go away. And that's usually the way it goes. I saw a video today on a YouTube channel called The Oregonin, I think. where I heard a video. We're going to listen to it right now. I'm going to react to it a little bit and comment on it. This is just what prison is like. I have schizophrenia myself. I have mental health issues. I know that guards can be really insensitive, and hearing this video really made me sad. Let's just listen to it here.
Jed Hawk Myers was 34 years old when he died shortly after midnight on May 28, 2015 at the Yamhill County Jail. Myers' death could have been prevented. He was assaulted in his cell, E28, at 7:08 p.m. on May 27th by 2 other inmates. Someone used the cell intercom to call for help, and at 7:25, Deputy Intern Colleen McNamara and Deputy Kiera Downs came up the stairs to the second level of E Block. They made their way along the upper tier to E28, where they found Myers.
As we went to walk into the cell, Myers stepped out of the cell and walked towards me and was incoherent because I kept telling him to stop walking towards me. He kept walking towards me. I said it 3 times until I finally stopped him in his place.
Let's pause this. She stopped him in his place. What a tough girl. You'll learn later in the video, this guy is so messed up, he doesn't even know what's going on around him. Guards can be some of the most privileged people I've ever met in my entire life because they take things personally. They don't take into account that some people live there and are never getting out. They like to go there with this tough guy complex, like, this is my house, you're just visiting it, pal. And it'll be some guy in his early 20s talking to a veteran pen timer who's well into his 40s and has been in jail longer than this guy's been alive. It's really disrespectful, and what gives these people the right to think this? Like, I get that you're given domain over violent inmates and it makes you think you're some kind of Superman, but you know, people, at the end of the day, everyone is a human being. They don't lock animals in jail. You don't get, it's not like you're locked into a cell and your roommate next to you is a dog or a panda bear. They're all human beings of all different shapes and colors, all different religions, and in jail, they get called racist a lot. There's a lot of times that black inmates will say, oh, it's because I'm black. Or native inmates will say, it's, oh, because I'm native. When really, you know, they see what's going on in the news and they see a lot of the things that should be, I don't really want to talk too much about it, but our country's in serious problem. Like, there's a real serious problem in our country with racism. Especially not so much in Canada, more in the United States, but yeah, it is a real problem, and people in jail like to grasp at straws sometimes. I'm not going to say racism doesn't exist, because it totally does. I have never come across a white guy that can't read. There are a lot of native guys in jail that don't know how to read. They grew up in residential schools and they had a really nothing short of horrific upbringing. There was one guy I met, Alistair. He's doing life in prison because he used to live on the reserve. He calls it the bush. A lot of people call it the bush. And he didn't know how to speak English when he came to jail. He spoke I don't know what exactly his language was, but he spoke a really thick native dialect. It wasn't a real well-known language. And there wasn't a lot of translators to teach him English. So he had to teach himself English. So he speaks a very kind of broken English, if that makes sense. And he would tell people, he told the people in, like, trigger warning real quick here. His sister was assaulted, you know, in a sexual manner. And she was really messed up after that, and he got a shotgun and literally hunted the man that did this to his sister. And when he got arrested by the police, he didn't even deny it. He said, well, you know how we go hunting? And the officer was a native officer to that reserve. He said, of course, I know that. He's like, well, this man hurt my sister, so I took my gun and I hunted him. That's first-degree murder. So you took your gun out to hunt a human being, that's first-degree murder. But because he didn't really speak a lot of English, that's the basic of what he was able to convey. Maybe he would have explained it differently if he would have known. That would have guaranteed him a life sentence in jail. There was another guy, native guy, Wesley McKay. I was in jail with him in Bowden. He's never getting out of jail. This man's never getting out of jail. I don't know what he was when he was a young man committing murder, but that man's totally different now. He's an old man that walks around with a cane, and his everyday life is about the Corcan. It's like a warehouse you work at in jail. His whole life is about getting up and running the upholstery warehouse. And I found that so sad. When you go to jail, you might think that the lifers are the most solid, most badass, most veteran people. That's not the case. Like, you think because they've been there the longest, they would be the most badass and have the most pull, have the most tattoos. Sometimes they have a lot of tattoos, but a lot of the time, that's not the case. Like, if there was this one guy, Joe, that came home to his wife in bed with another man, he went to the other room, loaded a revolver, 6 bullets into this revolver. It was a licensed firearm to him, and because he took him 6 seconds to load that revolver, or a few seconds to load the 6 bullets into the revolver, and he had to go to the other room, the judge deemed that that was enough time to not warrant a crime of passion. A crime of passion is basically just that. You see your wife in bed with another wife of 50 years in bed with another man, or as a woman, you see your husband in bed with another woman, and you just, something shuts off and you go blind rage and something happens. But normally that is if you have like a shotgun in the bedroom or something like that, and you know, you don't have time to think about your actions. This man, the judge deemed he had time to think about his actions, and therefore it was first-degree murder. He spent the rest of his life in jail, but before he went to jail, he wasn't some veteran criminal. He was what criminals call a straight John, like a guy who's free of criminal activity. And yeah, he doesn't deserve to get to have to live with people that he would have been afraid of in the real world. Well, not necessarily afraid of, but people he wouldn't have associated with, because he was a hard-working man of 50 years. He was 70 years old or something like that. He was an old man. He would spend, we would encourage him when he was on the treadmill. We would say, when he was running, we'd be like, there he goes, Joe. You know, you do whatever just to keep spirits high in there at times. But he didn't really interact with people. He didn't talk to people. He was just doing his own thing. So, but getting a little off track here, I have serious ADHD. I'll try to stay on track. Most lifers aren't solid in the sense of being a criminal. They are hardworking people that made a mistake, and unfortunately that mistake cost them the rest of their life in jail. So normally you want to avoid the lifers if you are a criminal, because they want to get out one day, and the only way to get out is by not interacting with the politics, and sometimes going to protective custody is required for you, but it's not fun. They usually make good friends with the guards so that when their parole hearing comes 25 years later, they have a good shot at making it. A lot of lifers that consider themselves gangsters, they don't get out of the max. They stay there for a lengthy period of time, sometimes going to the SHU, which is the special handling unit. So prison can be hard for people that aren't criminals because the gangs run the show. But there are certain jails where the guards think they run the show. There was a guard in Bowden that took this, in Bowden, the security's not as high, and there's a lot of old men there. It's a lot of offenders of a certain type of nature, and it's just not a place you want to be. Anyways, let's get back to this video. I got way off track here.
He was sweaty and panting, and he said his chest hurt.
He said his chest hurt. The woman's stopped him in his tracks. Remember that, this guard.
And I said, where does it hurt? And he touched his stomach. And so I asked again, what hurts? And he said his chest. And I asked again because, to me, this is your chest, and this is your stomach. And he put his hand on the side of his stomach. I was trying to figure out if he was coherent to where the pain was coming from.
McNamara and Downs entered Myers' cell.
He obviously wasn't coherent.
McNamara described Myers as having a dislocated shoulder.
At that point, Myers took off his shirt, and I could tell that his shoulder, what I observed to be, was dislocated. There was something protruding towards the front, and the shoulder did not look like a normal shoulder. I observed a sore on the front and back of his shoulders, what I would call an open sore. It wasn't bleeding, but it was shiny. You could tell that it was open. It looked relatively fresh. I didn't see any.
There was a guy that's doing life in Drumheller. His name was OJ. He got stabbed in the arm so many times one morning when he was waking up. They rushed into his cell when the doors opened and stabbed him so many times in the arm. It looked like strings. You could just see the ligaments and all this bloody gore that was his bicep hanging by the ligaments. It was super graphic and gross. Nobody should ever have to see those things. My first couple weeks in Bowden, somebody got their head cracked open with a tuna can. People put like tuna cans or a bunch of lockbox locks in a sock and whip you in the face with it. Boom, you are down. Blood everywhere. You see these fights in the movies where like there's like a back and forth for like some time. Literally blood is flying everywhere in a matter of seconds when somebody gets rolled on in jail.
Stabbing, but it was not bleeding.
McNamara, Downs, and two other deputies escorted Myers from E28 to a cell in the med unit. Inmates along the way noticed Myers was in pain.
He had to stop, and like he was holding his side, he was leaning up against the wall, and they were like, he was down, and he was like, I hurt, I'm in pain, like, he was like screaming, basically. It looked like he cracked a rib and something punctured him or something like that.
I was sitting on the stairs, and I just heard a guy talk.
Something punctured him. Inmates don't usually like to talk to the police, especially in the maximum unit. If you leave to go see your parole officer, that could be life-altering for you. Sometimes, like, you get seriously messed up because why are you leaving the range? You could see your parole officer through the bars like everyone else does. It's not advised that you leave the range in the first couple weeks in the max. First couple months, really. Like, you should stay where everybody could see you. That way there's no gossiping, there's no denying that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing.
About pain.
Also, when people can be cruel, super cruel. Like, you could be having, like let's say somebody comes to the range and nobody knows him yet, but you say, hey, come eat lunch with me. And it turns out that guy's like, trigger warning, a sexual offender. That's bad news for you. That's like super bad news for you. Well, not really, but people start bugging you. They start saying, like, once that guy gets removed from the unit in a violent nature, which is usually how it happens, everybody starts asking you, that was your bro. What happened to your bro? You guys were like this, and they pump their fists together. You guys were like that. You were so tight. What happened to your boy? And it's just, there's no kindness in jail. It's only weakness. It's never kindness. They only see weakness, and it's really unfortunate because some people would rather spend their time in solitary. I spent years in solitary confinement, not because I wanted to, well, sometimes partly because I wanted to. It's a lot more peaceful there. You don't have to worry about the inmates taking a stand against the guards, which can be annoying. You get on a range where the inmates want to show the guards that they run the show. They'll refuse to lock up. Their meals are like 5 minutes late. And there's usually a power struggle when they move ranges around, which happens often so that inmates can't get closer to the guards and stuff, especially in the maxes. Anyways, like, people are really cruel. Once somebody gets rolled out violently, they're all laughing and saying, ha, that guy. And it's just a violent place. Really horrific. Like, this guy, the inmates would probably be laughing at him and telling him to shut up. Like, when I was having a schizophrenic episode in jail, the guards were definitely messing with me. I was in the healthcare unit in Stony Mountain Institution, and some of the inmates were messing with me. There were lifers there that I had met from a previous time that I knew were lifers. A lot of guys have their names tattooed somewhere on their body, usually their last name, and sometimes they have it on their face. this one guy was talking to me, and the guards had sent him to talk to me. He said his name was something else, but that wasn't the case. He had his name tattooed on his face, and he thought the COVID mask was going to hide his appearance. But when the guards are trying to mess with you, it's horrific. They mess with your food, they double door you, which is when you leave your cell and you're not supposed to interact with other inmates, and they purposefully open the door of another inmate that they know you will not get along with. In Edmonton Max, they had what was called the Fight Club, where when you were in segregation, they would open 2 doors, and if you did not fight the person that they double doored you with, the guards would beat the crap out of both of you and smash your TV over your head. You can look it up, Edmonton Maximum Security Institution. The things that went on there were nothing short of horrific. And while you're watching, like while you're looking that up, consider this. Nobody believes what inmates say. We're all dirty criminals. We're not somebody's mother, we're not somebody's brother, we're not somebody's father, we're not somebody's uncle. We're animals to be kept in a cage. And that's how the guards treat you. So try to remember this when these inmates are saying this. They can't just yell out and say, hey, this guy needs help, because people are really bored in jail. A lot of guys will instigate violence just to see somebody hurt another person because, hey, something new. It's horrific. It's hard to see how anybody gets better from this.
Looked pretty pale, and like he ran into the door as he was walking out, like kind of stumbling.
At 7:31 p.m., Myers arrived at Med Cell B. Deputies
To be fair to the guards, I got an intelligent person can be able to debate it both ways. To be fair, there are people that take a large quantity of unknown pills that make them act in a way that would be totally annoying, and I get that. I get that might be hard to deal with, but if you're going to be a prison guard, you should have more than grade 10 education, that's for sure, which is the basic minimum requirement. They don't have to have any psychological training. A parole officer and a guard can just switch places whenever they want. It's pretty corrupt.
continued to examine him. Deputy Downs noted the injury to Myers' shoulder.
He's sitting down, he's still holding his chest. He's moving his shoulder, so, there was a big bump, but I couldn't tell what kind of injury it was.
Myers appeared to be bothered by his shoulder and appeared to be wincing with pain. As Deputy Roger Swift got Myers a glass of water, Deputy Downs noticed a bump on the side of Myers' head and pointed it out to Swift.
And I also noticed a contusion on his head, on his right side, because that's on the side I was standing. A red bump on the side of his head, just above the ear.
Myers continued to show signs of pain and disorientation, lying down, rolling back and forth, and then sitting back up. Medical technician Kevin Thurman came to the cell to examine Myers.
Kind of agitated, but not like I'm gonna fight you agitated. Just unsettling, just wouldn't sit still. I'm trying to just say, you need to stop screaming. What's going on? And I put our pulse ox on his finger, and his heart rate was 130, and he was, his oxygen level was 99%. And I tried probably 5 or 6 times to get a blood pressure on him, and he wouldn't sit. I couldn't even get him to sit still. He would flex or move, and so the machine kept coming up with errors. So I never got a blood pressure on him.
At about 7:37 p.m., Thurman gave up on getting a blood pressure reading. Myers appeared to be complaining about his side and his shoulder. MedTech Thurman wondered about Myers sweating.
The thing that stuck out is that he was rapid heart rate and sweaty, and you can't fake being sweaty, but then, he's sweaty and tachycardic, so I'm like, something's going on.
Despite Thurman's concerns, he left the cell at 7:38 and did not return. His shift ended at 10. Thurman was the only medically...
That's another thing. I'm going to pause right here. Guards, what inmates will sometimes do in protest is they'll block up their window because technically a guard has to see that you're alive and kicking every hour on the hour. But sometimes they'll just ignore you and then they won't pass on your concerns to the next staff when they do shift change. So when you start having a complaint at 11 at night or right after shift change, they're like, oh my God, really? I have to start my day like this? And they usually take their anger out on the inmate because they don't look at it as somebody that's been told, okay, I'll I'll do this for you. Sometimes, like, if you're in segregation and you need like a toilet paper roll, that could be pretty dire. You're sitting there on the toilet and you're out of toilet paper. Like, hey guys, can I get a toilet paper? And they'll say, oh yeah, in the next round, an hour comes along, you're still sitting on the toilet. Hey guys, what about that toilet paper? Oh yeah, next round. And then you start getting angry. It seems, it wasn't a big deal at first. It was just a roll of toilet paper, and now you're causing a full-on protest because you don't have it. Like, it happens a lot. There was a guy that died in Edmonton Max on C Unit. Back in the day, we called him Goose. It was New Year's Eve, and he had voiced concern to the nurse at 11. It was 11:15. The nurses come between 11 a.m. and noon, and he was saying, I don't feel well. I really need to see the doctor. It's not a joke. I need to see the doctor now. And they said, we'll put you on the list. He's like, you said that before. And the wait lists for healthcare can be months, sometimes years. To see a dentist, good luck. It's not happening. I saw a guy die of testicular cancer while waiting to see a nurse. His, like, pardon my friend, his testicle was the size of a grapefruit, and he couldn't even sit down. He had to threatened to take he had to take the reins hostage, basically. He refused to lock up. A bunch of guys made a stand for him. He ended up dying because it was far too late when they saw him. I've seen guys die from too much pepper spray. I've seen guys die. Well, I've seen one guy die from too much pepper spray, but that's still a person dying. That's somebody's brother. That's somebody's father. That's somebody's son. Like, and a lot of people in jail. Jail is a place for society to send the people it's afraid of, so that they can forget about that they ever existed. Let's get back to this video.
Trained staff member to examine Myers in
I got off track. The point I was trying to make is there is no guarantee that when shift change happened, they voiced the inmate's concerns to the next guy. They could have just said, hey, there's a guy being a shithead in cell whatever, be aware. They even turned this guy's cell button off, his emergency call button. They turned it off because they said he was needy. Oh, geez. Sorry, I'm just dying here, guys.
He left the cell at 7:38 and did not return. His shift ended at 10. Thurman was the only medically trained staff member to examine Myers in the hours before his death. Myers continued to grimace and
hours.
Sweat was evident on his upper body. Deputies Tamara Hart and Roger Swift were the last two deputies in Myers' cell while he was alive. At 7:43, Swift left, and then a few seconds later, Hart left. Myers was left alone in his cell. He appeared to be crying.
I encourage you guys to watch the video. It's called Lawyer Says Man Died in Jail After Receiving No Treatment After Assault by Other Inmates. He's just rolling around like somebody that's just been knocked out, and he's trying to recover from like that impact or a grenade blast or something like you would see in a movie.
Crying out. Then he got up and went to the door, where it appeared he pushed the intercom button for help. The intercom for Med Cell B is to the left of the door. Myers sat back down. He continued to yell or scream, sometimes clutching his side. He lay back down, but didn't look comfortable. He was sweating and calling out. It looked like he might have yelled, "Help me."
Heartbreaking.
Nearby in Med Cell E, inmate Thomas O'Donnell reported he could hear Myers screaming. Oh, he sat there and screamed. He kept screaming, "Help me, help me." He screamed. He screamed, he screamed, he screamed, to the point, like I said,
That's from an inmate, another inmate. So there's no way the guards can't hear that. The guards have an intercom in every cell. Just in case somebody gets killed, they have that evidence. This is ridiculous.
Got up there and pushed the button. Like I said, he just kept screaming. I didn't understand why they didn't take him to the hospital.
This does happen. When the guards were messing with me, all the other inmates were kind of fed up with my episode at the time, and that was also scaring me. It was like, these guys want to kill me. People die in jail all the time. Like, they put me in a place where I was having a medical episode, and it was the most horrific couple months I'd ever spent in jail in my life. And like I said, I spent 8 years in jail. One time.
7:45, Myers was back at the intercom. He made several trips to the door and the intercom that night. None of the calls were answered. Deputy Hart.
Also, I don't know what this guy was in jail for. Maybe he did something horrific to children. Maybe he, who knows what he did. But that doesn't excuse what they did to him. Two wrongs don't make a right. And, I certainly was taught that when I was a kid. It's hard for me to picture somebody that wasn't told that as a child. What parent is telling their kid, hit wrong with wrong? That'll make it right. No. This guy's a human being, and, if you believe what some people believe, if you die in jail, your soul is trapped in there. Some people believe that. They truly do, and that would be horrific. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Explained the intercom would be deactivated for an inmate who was judged to be overly needy.
See that? They deactivated his emergency cell call. Imagine that. You're dying, and everybody can hear you, and they don't care.
We have an ability to disable an intercom in our holding cells, in our medical cells, and generally they will be.
It says voice of Deputy Tamara Hart. I just can't. I hate this person. I know I shouldn't feel that way, but she seems to have no remorse. Really no remorse. I don't know. I don't know this person. Maybe they have a buttload of remorse, but I know guards, and it's really unfortunate that the ones that do have compassion are usually put somewhere where they don't interact with inmates a lot. They put the hard asses with most of the inmates so that, you're hardened emotionally and physically. Let's just rewind that back. Sorry, guys.
Overly needy.
We have an ability to disable an intercom in our holding cells, in our medical cells, and generally they will be disabled because we will have somebody in there that is just very needy, and they're always on it. So
They're just very needy and always on it. Oh my God. Sorry if this man dying was an inconvenience.
Them just pushing it because they're, upset about something, they're not getting their way or their attention. And so in that instance, we'll...
Okay, like I said before, that is true. There are guys that are really annoying. There was this guy from Sudan named Ruben who would literally freak out at everyone that walked past his cell, not the inmates, but the guards. He would say, "Oh, you're doing this to me because I'm white, or because I'm black." And they were like, "What are you talking about?" They even sent a guard that was also the same skin color as him, and he tried to say, you're saying, no matter what they did to appeal peace to him, he just kept saying, "You're racist. It's a racist jail. It's a racist system." I'm not a believer in critical race theory myself, but I know what it is. And it is a thing. And if you are a guard trying to, just get on with your day, I don't know how I would react to that. I don't want to say anything, but that might get to me after a while. If you're not racist and you're constantly being called racist, that would get to you. It would certainly get to me. In jail, that's not something you call somebody else. You don't call somebody a racist all willy-nilly because it's a very serious thing. You could be considered a member of the Aryan Brotherhood, which is one of the most deadly gangs in jail. They are the deadliest. So you don't want people to associate you with that group if you're not a part of that group. And yeah. Not trying to defend this woman's actions, but she I would be remiss if I did not say that it is like a dual-edged sword. How is she supposed to know this person's dying? I do get that, but now that she knows he's dead, it's like, oh well, how was I supposed to know? It's like, well, there should be something in place to prevent this. That's the most horrific way to die. It's like, imagine you're drowning, but you can breathe in the water, and you slowly, that's not a good analogy, but for me personally, this, I don't want to say it triggers me because that sounds weak, but that Yeah, I don't want to sound like a victim or anything, but this man did not deserve to die like that. Nobody deserves to die like that. The guy we called Goose, I talked about earlier, that died, he might have, trigger warning, taken his own life, but it was hard to tell. The guards don't tell you anything. They said that he was abusing drugs, which, if there are drugs on the range, the inmates are going to know about it. And there was no drugs on the range at this time. And they said they found a white substance on his desk, which was just an excuse to lock the range down and search us just after Christmas. This guy was like one of our friends. Like, he was friendly to everybody on the times he did come out of his cell. He was set to be released from jail in like less than 2 years. He came out of his, like, they dragged him out of his cell with a white plastic bag on his head, and he was in his house coat. I saw the guard that was the first responder, I guess you could say, heaving on his chest with such force, it looked like he was trying to fill a bounce castle for his kid's birthday. Like, you could hear ribs popping and snapping, like, and the most disturbing part is, they left this man on the edge of the range from, well, like I told you before, he was found at around 11:45. Like, guards do their round every hour. He told healthcare staff at 11:15 that he really needed to see the doctor. It was an emergency. He wasn't playing around. He needed to see the doctor. And they just brushed him off, said, "Oh, you can wait, just like everyone else." And within the hour, he was dead. They left his body on the range covered with a blanket until 5:30 p.m. when they brought a stretcher to bring him up the stairs, just where I couldn't see out of range of my cell. And yeah, like, that was a human being. I remember thinking, that's a human being covered in feces and like just lazily covered with a blanket and left on the bottom of the stairs where it's all dirty and stuff. The inmates don't clean behind the stairs because the guards don't usually check there. The inmates who clean the range usually only clean the spots that the guards check so that they can get to other business to the range. Anyways, sorry I keep interrupting this video. Let's go back to it. I'll rewind to it.
We will have somebody in there that is just very needy, and they're always on it. So between, them just pushing it because they're, upset about something, they're not getting their way or their attention. And so in that instance, we'll put their cell up on a screen, just kind of monitor them.
Myers' cell could be monitored in the jail control room on a 1/9 section of a large screen TV.
1/9 section. On the other, they usually have a laptop in front of them where they're watching videos or on YouTube or Facebook. They're not usually monitoring the cameras because there's a toilet in that cell. What weirdo is looking? I remember when I was on suicide watch once, I thought it was weird that the one guard was just staring at me everywhere. Even when I used the bathroom, I said, "Hey, I'm not suicidal. Can you give me a second?" And she would like focus her eyes on me. No other guard did that. She was the only one that did that. But I appreciate that she did it. It was, she had my safety in mind. It might have been annoying at the time, but I'm not dead, so that's something.
Deputies monitoring his cell would have seen Myers yelling and writhing on his bed. His side appeared to be bothering him. He looked sweaty. He appeared to be in pain. At 7:48, he was back to the door and the intercom.
I guess
another call for help. He returned to the door at 7:50. Back at the bed, he sat down, clutching his stomach in obvious pain. A couple of minutes later, he rolled to the side and onto the floor of his cell. He looked like he was trying to get comfortable. One position after another to see what worked. Again, it looked like he was saying, "Help me."
Yeah.
He returned to the door and the intercom at 8:03. One more attempt to get someone's attention. Deputies began a series of security look-ins on Myers. Deputy Eric Klauser performed a check at 8:07. At that point, Myers was back lying on his bed. Deputy McNamara was back for another security check at 8:12. Again, Myers was lying on his bed. 2 minutes later, Myers returned to the door to push the intercom buzzer. To the door again at 8:20. A try for the intercom again at 8:27. At 8:30, he fell off his bunk and sprawled on the floor.
Oh, no.
After a short while, with some effort, he struggled to get up at 8:31 and made another attempt at the buzzer.
Poor guy.
At 8:38, Myers' cell was falling into disarray. It looked like he was becoming more disoriented. He made 2 more attempts at the door to get help at this time.
Oh, no.
Myers tried the door and the intercom again at 8:53. He sat back down and leaned against the wall. At 8:54, Myers got up to urinate in the toilet. When he was done and moved away, the previously clear water...
Oh my God!
Blood in Myers' urine.
There is it looks like he's making cherry wine. Oh, I didn't make it through the whole video before. I only made it halfway through because it was too much to watch. This is bad. Oh God. When I was in healthcare after my schizophrenic episode, I thought I was dying because I still had a taser prong stuck in my body. I had been tasered twice, and I almost died. I was it was weird things were happening to my body, and I was obviously beat up, and they didn't care. They shut off my thing, and I was just telling them, please, if I'm gonna die, just tell my girlfriend I love her. And this one girl's guard's you don't have a girlfriend, look at you. Totally insensitive, totally didn't care. They kept trying to get me to go out with the other inmates, even though, how I was because of my mental state would have been annoying to the other inmates. It would have put my life in danger if I were to interact with them, because half the time I didn't even know who I was. Schizophrenia is not a fun thing to have. It is a real burden.
Had turned the toilet water red.
God.
At 9:18, Deputy Downs was on the rounds for the security check and peeked in the door window of Med Cell B. She apparently saw the blood in the toilet because she stood at the door window for several seconds, staring into the cell. She was about to leave the medical cell area when she doubled back to look in the cell again.
Oh, maybe.
She told Sergeant Woody Little, the jail commander, about what she had seen, and he suggested the red color was Kool-Aid.
Oh my God!
Water that was red.
She told Sergeant Woody Little, the jail commander, about what...
Where is he gonna get Kool-Aid?
He suggested the red color was Kool-Aid.
It was very warm.
Okay, guys, he's in a segregation cell. They don't take your property. They don't take your canteen with you usually until 24 hours. You have to be in segregation for 24 to 48 hours in most jails before they give you your property, like your canteen and stuff like that. Some jails it's 3 days because you're there to be punished. Who knows what the case was with this guy? Like it said earlier, he was transferred late at night, so who knows?
This water that was red, and so that was kind of odd to me. And I asked the sergeant what we have on the food that's red, and he said Kool-Aid. The juice pack was Kool-Aid. It was red.
That woman was there earlier, or maybe this is a different girl. This is Kira Downs on the video, but who knows?
Flavored or something red flavored.
Sergeant Little explained what led to his opinion.
That's another horrible thing. Like I said, when they do shift change, they don't know what the previous shift knows. They might just have the basics, like, oh, this guy's a shit disturber, or have fun for a good night. This guy's really, making us work for our paycheck. They do that all the time. There was this one time I woke up after the guard shined a flashlight in my face. I hadn't slept in 4 days when I was having my episode, and he was an asshole and shined the light in my face, and his female partner said, you were an asshole, you woke him up, you deal with him, I'm not doing it. And when he came to my cell and had to deal with me, he looked just defeated. They have a giant blue mag light that they will purposely flash in your face to wake you up every hour on the hour. Obviously, this guard didn't know that I had been up for the past 4 days, being an absolute nightmare for the guards. Mental health is a nightmare to go through. it's a nightmare to deal with for everyone involved. So, yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to feel sympathetic for the guards because of what I've went through and what I've seen people I care about go through. It's difficult for me. So if I sound insensitive to these guards, I apologize. Maybe I don't know what their situation is, but I know my situation with a lot of the guards I've dealt with. There was only one guard, like one or two guards in my entire jail stay that I would say I respected enough to call decent.
Opinion that the red color was caused by some
Kool-Aid. It could be Kool-Aid. He was taken from his unit late at night. Guards don't go above and beyond to take canteen, and this man doesn't look like he has all that much canteen in his cell. He looks like he has the tray that they provided him with food, and it's like sprawled over everywhere.
The juice pack was Kool-Aid. It was like raspberry flavored or something red flavored.
Sergeant Little explained what led to his opinion that the red color was caused by some kind of food product.
Well, let's see, they had 3 sack lunches today, or sack meals, so originally would have been in probably at least one of them. We also have fruit punch and God knows what else on the
Wait a minute, fruit punch? Like, he's not even talking a canteen item. He's talking like a little cup of watered down juice. This is like a thick red. He must have got the best batch of juice if that was the case. This is ridiculous.
Little said he wished Myers would have...
Wait a minute. God
Little
knows
said
what
he
else.
wished Myers would have gone to the door and used the intercom to tell someone he was in distress.
Oh my... Oh my God! I'm gonna rewind that, guys. That's what?
Little said he wished Myers would have gone to the door and used the intercom to tell someone he was in
The
distress.
intercom you turned off?
I watched the video. I see JoJo. I see him go to the toilet, and I see that the water's red. Anyways, he's standing. All he has to do is walk over and push a button on the wall.
Of course, Myers had pushed the intercom button several times, and no one came to his aid.
That's just
At
what guards are like.
9:37, he was moving around on his bunk and fell off onto the floor. A few minutes later, at 9:41, he fell off again.
I'm gonna be sick.
The next round of security checks was at 10:03, and Deputy Klauser was the one making the rounds. If Klauser hadn't already seen the...
Klauser was not the guy from before. That guy that sounded like an insensitive prick was a different guy.
Blood in the toilet from monitoring in the control room, he would have seen it on his look-in. Klauser explained from his observations, he thought Myers was on drugs.
When you see people come in on their
Must have been some pretty good drugs, guys. Like, I don't know drugs that last that long. Especially in jail, the quantities you get are so little. Like, half the time you're spending $100 for a point that's not even a street point. It's called a jail point, which is like half of a point, basically.
People on drugs have, erratic movement and seeing weird stuff and crawling around.
This is a guy that's probably never done drugs in his entire life. How do you know?
It depends on the drug or the time lapse that it's been on, or just like an alcohol detox. They do a lot of
Oh God, he's trying to pull himself up to the toilet. I really recommend you guys, if you can handle it, watch this video. It was uploaded 6 days ago by the Oregonian, Oregonian. It's called Lawyer Says Man Died in Jail After Receiving No Treatment After Assault by Other Inmates. This is painful.
At 10:43, it appeared Myers struggled to get something to...
Also, let's say this guy was in for, like, harming children or doing something like that. The inmates that would have forcibly beat him up and made him leave the range, they probably weren't even the guys that wanted to have this done to him. They were probably guys that just got there, and the big top gang member guys that run the range probably said, hey, this guy's got to go. You can have, like, a cup of noodles and just smash him out. They probably got charged with murder after this. Who knows? Like, the inmates that attacked him, because the guards would want to save their own asses. They wouldn't want to admit, oh yeah, I did this to this man. No. Or I was responsible for this. Oh, God.
Drink from the sink in his cell. The next round of security checks was performed by Sergeant Little. When Little reached Myers' cell door, he spent a few seconds looking in. Something he saw in Myers' cell caused him to turn back and take another look.
But
At that time, Myers appeared to be resting on his bed. The blood in the toilet was still easily seen.
Oh my God.
At 11:20, Myers was lying on the floor. He struggled to get up and made his way to the door. He was still trying to get the attention of someone who would either hear the intercom or see him go to the door on the security video. When he left the door, it looked like he fell to the floor and in the process hit the toilet. At 11:27, Myers made another trip to the door and the intercom. When he left the door, he stood by the toilet. He presumably flushed the toilet this time because when he stepped away, the toilet bowl water was clear. The blood had been visible for about 2.5 hours. In all, Myers made 19 trips to the door to push the button for help.
No.
From 11:31 to shortly after midnight, Myers made his final 5 trips to the door.
Oh, no.
Each time he went to the door to try and reach someone on the intercom. Myers had to struggle to get up for his final trip to the door at 12:06. All of his trips to the door were ignored. Deputies who saw him on the monitor going to the intercom to ask for help also ignored him. Deputy Dwayne McCommons was on duty for security checks at 12:11. He quickly glanced in Myers' cell. Myers was resting on the floor at the end of his bunk. Myers was apparently becoming weaker and weaker. He tried to get up at 12:19 and fell to the ground. He didn't look good. Deputy Klauser was monitoring Myers' cell from the control room at 12:24.
At one point, he propped himself up on the toilet and sat there, and he got up, kind of stood up, wobbled, and then slowly he got to the bunk at the edge, and he kind of leaned into it, and then he kind of fell against the wall, but real slow, like controlled, and then slid down that, and then kind of rolled onto the floor there.
At 12:33, Myers was propped up in a corner, and his head suddenly slumped forward. He never raised his head again. Apparently, the standard for an injured inmate to get help was to stop breathing. At 12:50, Deputy McCommons noticed that Myers wasn't moving and decided he should go up to the cell and check on him.
I commented, I said, he doesn't really...
A different guard again.
And was kind of checking him out, we were both looking, and I was getting ready to get up and Klaus, maybe you should check on him. So I got up and immediately went and checked on him.
Finally, at 12:52, early on the morning of Thursday, May 28th, 2015, a deputy entered Myers' cell. After all Myers' attempts to raise someone on the intercom, and after all his calls for help, it was too late. Deputy McCommons described what he found.
I checked his pulse on his wrist and then reached up and did a check for his carotid artery, and I could feel no pulse. His skin felt cold and clammy.
Deputies Swift and Hart joined McCommons. They did what they could, but Myers was dead. Time of death was given at 1:15 a.m., but the security video showed he had stopped breathing about a half hour before that. The autopsy showed Chet Myers had a lacerated kidney. He had suffered massive internal... He showed Chet Myers had a lacerated kidney. He had suffered massive internal bleeding. He had a broken rib. His right clavicle was broken. He also suffered an injury to the right side of his head and brain damage. The injury stemmed from the assault Myers suffered shortly after 7 p.m. the day before. But his death was caused by the decisions made by the jail staff working under the policies and practices of Yamhill County. A well-equipped examination room is in the jail, but the records of Myers' death show no discussion of its possible use. And no one called for an ambulance.
You monsters.
Myers' loved ones know that their son, nephew, and brother died alone In a cell at the county jail, Myers left behind a daughter, Lacey, who was 3 at the time of her father's death.
No.
The family agrees Myers was a good parent, a loving father. Jed Myers was 34 years old when he died inside the Yamhill County Jail.
No.
He was in jail for a parole violation and was scheduled to be released on May 28th, the day he died.
No! Oh, come on! I don't know how to feel about that, guys. I wanted to stream for an hour today, react to this video. I suggest you guys get the video, check out the video when you get a chance. Comments are turned off on the video, but I don't believe in hiding freedom. I don't believe in stifling people's voices. I believe in freedom of speech within reason. If there's a bunch of hateful comments under this video, I will delete them. I want you guys to remember this was a human being. Just like I said, it was somebody's father, somebody's nephew, somebody's son. I don't know, there's another video I saw where that man, he was shot in the face. I'll make a video later where I comment on that. It's a very well-known video. A bunch of famous YouTubers already comment on it. It's a man that was, I forget the names, but he was shot in the face. These guys went to go rob him, and they killed his girlfriend and shot him in the face, and he survived the gunshot to the face initially, and he was just walking around his house aimlessly for days. When the cops got there, he had handcuffed himself to one of the coffee tables, and that's another thing that people do with serious brain trauma, is they recognize simple shapes. That is also a horrific story. They interrogated this man for hours thinking he was the one that killed his wife, or his girlfriend, because it wasn't until after that they realized he had a bullet in his head the entire time they were interviewing him. Which is my point. Police officers and prison guards can be so insensitive. When they think somebody is guilty, they don't even consider the possibility that they might be wrong. It's so sad, and these are the people that are supposed to save us. I know personally, when the police show up, I'm afraid. And I know a lot of other people that feel the same way, that they get, even if they're not doing anything wrong. The police have become a sort of gang that just bullies the citizens of our countries. In places like Mexico, it's even worse. The people who are given a little bit of authority and they start robbing people. I have people that live in Mexico. I was raised in foster care, and my foster mother's sister lives in Mexico. And there was one time that the cartels did a systematic robbing of all the people that were living there. And they didn't just know how much people had on hand, they know how much they had in the bank, because it's just so corrupt over there. Law enforcement, I'm sure not everyone's corrupt, but like the ones that are pretty bad. Like I said, guys, I was in jail for 8 years. I spent most of my time in maximum security prisons, and out of all the people I've met in jail, only a handful of them seem like they really belong there. And even them, they're shaped by the violence of jail. Jail is a violent, horrific place. Like, this man was somebody's, like, father. I'm not a serious religious person, but I do one day want to be a serious man of God. I consider myself a believer in God, and I just hope that, I pray for this man's family. This is tragic, because I don't think people were arrested. I don't think any justice was done. They have unions. The guards have unions to protect them from stuff like this. Tell me in the comments, what do you guys think? Have any of you been to jail? If so, what was your experience? Would you want to, I don't know. That video has just left me speechless, guys. just speechless. Again, I'm gonna leave a pin in the comments for the video that I commented on today. I encourage you guys to check it out. Have a good day. For anyone that joined us today, thank you, and I will try to make a thing of this. If there's a certain video you want me to comment on from jail, or any questions, just let me know in the comments, guys. Thank you, and have a good one.